So last night, as the entire United States witnessed, we saw Kawhi put up 45 points on 25 shots, which was incredible. Again, another Kawhi putting the Clippers on his back. And funnily enough, the front page of the Dallas Morning News had the headline, "Kawhi Leonard is a robot." So I thought that was quite funny, and it kind of like puts both his personality and the fact that nobody can guard this guy into perspective. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the pressure on the Clippers. It's very weird this series because not a single team has won at home. Every away team has won, and that's just very, very odd for the NBA. Usually it's a home court advantage heavy. And I wanted to talk about the pressure about the Clippers because, so much has been said about Kawhi and Paul George. Kawhi came to the Clippers off the back of a championship. Paul George was that huge free agent all-star that everybody was going after, and he chose the Clippers with Kawhi. So is the reason for their struggle solely because they're relying on two guys, and perhaps the playoff curse of the Clippers is kind of like hanging over their head? And if Kawhi isn't performing, rarely does Paul George seem to perform in the playoffs. The Paul George we see in the regular season is very different to the one we see in the playoffs. Seb, as our resident Clippers fan, give me your take.
I might start with the Paul George slander. I might start with that because I think this needs to stop. I do think in part he's overshadowed slightly. He's playing with Kawhi, who is arguably one of, if not the best two-way player in the game. Top 10, top 5, some people maybe might say in the game right now. He obviously did come across in a bumper trade. There was a lot made of it. But this is the thing. He's still averaging over 23 points. He's averaging over 5 assists. Realistically, we've got Reggie Jackson, our starting point right now. A lot of our offense is run through Paul George. I think he takes on a lot of that load. Mm-hmm. And he's facilitating, he's creating. And I think that does take it out of him. He does sort of... I don't think that gets brought up enough, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that. So I think the Paul George slander needs to stop.
What if I said to you that here's his plus minus for home games: -10, -6, -5. At home, he has not been able to do anything. Away from home, he is +10, +25, +7. So it's very weird that at home he is a below average player at best, and then away from home he is way far superior. He looks like the all-star that he is. Last night he was great, not nearly on the same level as Kawhi obviously, but he's still an all-star performance. Is it the home thing that is the problem for the Clippers, or is it just one of those things?
I do think it's one of those things. This season obviously has been weird. We've had this pandemic going around, apparently. I don't know, there's been some sort of COVID or something.
Yeah, something small.
Which has really impacted... Yeah, it's not really that much. That's obviously had a massive impact on having sort of fans in arenas, etc. I do think having fans back in again gonna make a difference again. Players have obviously got very used to, I think, not having fans. Have them back in again, I think, would be a bit of a shake-up. And then I think you've also got quite a disparity between the amounts of fans in each arena. Mm-hmm. Obviously, America seems to be letting states just kind of do whatever they want.
I think teams
which is very different.
Teams can decide when they bring players back in. The state can have a say, but I'm pretty sure it's the team that basically decides whether they want 75% filled, 100% filled, or whatever.
I thought it was down to state legislation, so I could be wrong there. Nevertheless, I know that Dallas, I think they've had about 18,000. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Clippers have not had anywhere near that. I don't know whether just not having that level of support, or he's seeming to perform better in that bigger crowd, though maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I do think it's one of those sort of anomalies this year, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Seb's opinion, Wish trash, your opinion is trash. I just look at numbers, right? So, Seb, as a resident Clippers fan, you tell me, who do you think is the Paul George or Daniel Oturu?
Who do I think is the better player?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Paul George.
Well, Daniel O'Toole has a
O'Toole is-
better player efficiency rating, so that just shows you how bad actual Paul George are. Next question.
What's the sample
Who do you
size?
think
What's the
has a better
sample
player-
size?
This isn't post. By the way, this isn't postseason. Like, you know, where it actually matters.
O'Toole
Who
has
has
played
a-
about 5 minutes total.
He's probably still more efficient than Paul George. That's the crazy part. Okay, fine. We'll pick someone that didn't play fine. Who do you think is a better player, Paul George or Kevin Knox from the Knicks?
Again, how many minutes is he playing per game?
Bro,
You,
okay, do you really want to know?
dude,
Want to know?
stats are always inflated when you have a much smaller
minutes.
sample size.
6 minutes, better player
Exactly.
efficiency.
Of course, because he's only probably taking 2 shots, and if he makes both of them, he's going to be so efficient.
Okay, to make you feel a bit
You
better,
show me. Yeah, compare me to a player that's playing 35 minutes plus a game.
Derrick Rose, equal efficiency. So, Paul George, this guy that you're like, oh, he's so good. By the way, saying, oh, he's averaging 5 assists. James Harden, the most selfish guy in the league, has more assists. What are you saying?
I mean, I do think the whole selfish James Harden debate sort of needs to get put to bed because he's averaged over 10
Paul
in 2 or 3 seasons.
Paul George.
That's not me. That's not me pushing that. That's not me pushing that narrative.
So now James Harden is suddenly selfless to defend his five
James
assists.
Harden's averaging 11 assists per game this year.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
That whole argument I think is it needs to be put to bed. My man's not.
Yeah, because he's finally left Houston and everyone's like, oh, I love James Harden. He's actually an amazing player now.
I love how he mentioned James Harden dance. Like he's like, oh!
I'm going to come defend James Harden no matter what.
Man, still salty.
But even then, man. I mean, even that. Like, I'm not gonna say I'm the most dedicated Clippers, viewer, because I have literally better things to do, like watch paint dry than watch them play. But
Jesus.
so I'm guessing Kawhi is getting guarded by Luka or someone. Who is guarding Paul George? Like, the reason he's not lighting it up on fire is because who's guarding him from Porzingis? Who?
It's probably. I mean, I'm imagining it's Tim Hardaway Jr. No.
That's even worse. That's even worse. You can't
we-
light it up against Tim Hardaway Jr., my dude.
The Clippers have made this very difficult for themselves. I do think I'm not a massive fan of Reggie Jackson getting the minutes that he's been getting, even though he's been great for us. I'd love to see Terrence Mann be getting more minutes towards the end of the season. He was on fire. Just generally that sort of like hustle, energy, great on defense, starting to get his 3-point percentage up. So I'd like to see him get a bit more minutes. We just made the whole series really difficult for us.
I think it's
which is
been
frustrating.
mostly lack of organization and defense. From what I saw last night, even through the win, I mean, there's very bad double teaming on Doncic, and if you haven't learned through 6 games now that the one player that they go through is Luka Doncic, I don't know what to tell you, because when he goes to the bench, that's when the Clippers come surging back. If they're down by 20 or 30, they'll make it a 10-point game and they have to throw Luka back in. I think the best example last night, which I saw, which was I think there was 6 minutes left to go in the first quarter, Kawhi and Marcus Morris were both looking at each other, whether to double team Luka at whatever point he was at the 3-point line. He faked a shot and both of them jumped at him because they're both looking at each other like, do we both take him? He just swished it out to Porzingis and he hits an open 3. It's like they don't know whether to double team him or not, and that lack of urgency really hurts them. If you look at the teams who are playing against James Harden for the last 3 years of the Houston Rockets, you watch last year's playoffs against the Lakers, all the Lakers did was straight onto James Harden. Every single time, straight onto James Harden at the half court. He had to pass it out to PJ Tucker. He had to pass it out to Russell Westbrook. What did Russell Westbrook do? He would turn the ball over. They have to know who would you rather have it in their hands, Tim Hardaway Jr. or Luka Doncic. It's super easy for me to say that. Luka was doubled 45% of the time this season, and if you have 2 of the best NBA so-called defensive players with Kawhi and Paul George, why are you not double teaming him with 2 of the best NBA players or defensive NBA players? It makes no sense to me. I'm not an NBA coach, so obviously it doesn't make sense to me. You'd think that you'd go through that motion maybe once or twice to see if that could slow down Luka, make him pass out to someone else. Porzingis has not been particularly effective. It's not the same Kristaps that we were used to seeing from the Knicks. So to me, it's very odd the way the Clippers are playing Luka. It's almost like, Luka, here's 11 free points at the beginning of the quarter. You get hot straight away, and then we'll come back. It's like they like to give themselves a handicap. It's very, very odd. I mean, Gabo, what do you think from what you've seen from the highlights and everything? What do you think about the Clippers and Dallas matchup?
Yeah, so I was actually gonna just ask the question that you just touched on towards the end. Like, first of all, you just said it. It's been 6 games. You know, if you haven't learned now, like, will you actually learn in the 7th? But at the same time, you know, from the games I saw, you know, maybe to exception of one, I believe, you know, the Mavs just took it a big lead early. You know, and that's not something. That's something that you gotta play the whole game. You know, just chasing. You know, and so I'll just throw the rhetoric back to Seb. You know, what has to change? Like Dan just said, you know, double teaming Luka, who by the way is one of the most entertaining players to watch right now.
Absolutely, yeah.
But what has to change? Is it morale? Is it structure? And, you know, this whole away-home thing, you know, is it pandemic related? Is it because there's no fans? So is it really home advantage? You know, like, what's going on? What has to change in that mentality?
I completely agree. The whole switching, double teaming, like the first 2 games, Zubats was just getting absolutely wrecked because we would switch everything. Luka would do that on purpose to get Zubats on him. Zubats would tend to not actually defend him too badly, but then Luka's still just going to take the step back, drain the 3, and then, you know, that's it. We need to not switch. Like you said, we've got 2 of the best wing defenders in the game, hands down. I don't really know why Ty Lue is not utilizing them. This was an issue with Doc Rivers in multiple series, getting so, like, stuck into a certain sort of defensive zone or like leaving certain players to guard others that there was no changing whatsoever. And then every single fan, like, I go through my Twitter mentions, everyone knows and can see what we need to do.
Yeah,
I thought Ty Lue was going to be different. I mean, he's a championship winning coach. Maybe it was LeBron that was actually the coach of that team back in the day.
because you know, at some point you have to say, well, we want Luka off the ball and we want to make another Dallas player carry this team. If you just take Luka out the game by double teaming with 2 of the best, you know, defensive players in the league, you're forcing Kristaps Porzingis to say, hey, you have to be the guy that you were at the Knicks. And I would every day of the week try make Kristaps try be that guy versus Luka, who is consistently a top 3 player in the league right now. It's very, very difficult for us to sit here and say that, but it's also very clear to me anyway when I'm watching the Clippers. I'm just like, why is nothing changed in 6 games? Is anything going to change in the 7th?
Yeah, I have a quick question, a hypothetical question for you guys. Just full on close-ended quick response. You know, let's say, God forbid, obviously for our own fan purposes, let's say Kawhi gets injured and Luka get injured. Who wins Game 7? Will Paul George, you know, going back to the whole rhetoric with Omar, like, will Paul George be
That'd be a horrible game to watch.
Or,
It would be so boring.
but who takes the win?
I think the Clippers do take the win because everything goes through Luka in Dallas. Just watch watch what happens when Luka goes to the bench. They fall apart. They can't hit a bucket. It's proper defense by the Clippers. They know their assignments are. There's no double teaming. There's no switching. It's super straightforward and easy. And the Clippers always outgun the Dallas Mavs when the bench is on. So to me,
but then that's the most frustrating thing is that you see those periods when he goes off.
Yeah.
And you see the defensive intensity, and it just seems to just click. I don't know what it is about him coming back in that we suddenly sort of change. I don't know what it is. He just discombobulates everyone somehow. And yes, he's also another top 10 at least player. You have to give him his respect, etc. But surely that should mean you're picking him up
at the half
94
court.
feet. Like, don't give him a breath. I
don't know if you guys remember in Game 5, you know, 31 of Dallas's 37 total field goals were either scored or assisted by Luka.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean,
that's
to me is
absolutely mad.
You know, when you're playing 2K and you know that you have that one player that's just on fire, and you're like, you know what,
It's when you do your my player and you want to just boost those stats and you just take the ball every single time.
Exactly. Just give them everything.
Madness. Yeah.
I don't know who's gonna win today. I honestly, I mean, it is a 50. As much as I hate to agree with Seb on anything, I think eventually Luka's just gonna get tired. You know, like it's just fatigue, right? Like it's just like as a top tier athlete playing that many minutes for consistently for that many days in a row takes a toll on you. Like I mean,
he's still injured.
I think he is playing with something.
Yeah, he had that little neck.
Yeah, neck
strain. 22-year-old. I don't see him getting tired anytime soon. Not with the hunger. Maybe the adrenaline just kicks in.
Yeah, I think so.
Damn,
yeah.
I love watching him play.
Yeah, he's great. So I did want to touch on this. Because I came across these statistics and it was kind of like related to the death of the home court advantage. This might be because we are still in a pandemic, but the stats surrounding the 2020-2021 season has been staggering, to say the least. So when I was digging around, I found that in 2010, we'll take 2020 as a good example because it's not too far in the past, the home teams were winning 60 to 75% of the time in the playoffs. That's quite a high margin. Rarely were you losing. Most of the games went to game 6 or 7. And in 2021, that number has dropped to 47 to 50% of the time. Now, of course, we're living in an age right now where stadiums are not full. Perhaps the away team isn't as worried about their performance anymore. But dropping from a point differential of +8 handicap at home to only a +1 handicap is a huge difference. So if we look at tomorrow night's game between the Clippers and the Mavs, historically the home team has 3 times more likely to win the first round of a series. So history suggests that the Clippers should easily advance against the Mavericks. But in this series, nobody has ever won at home. So my question to you guys is, what is the issue with this home court advantage going on this year? Is it pandemic related? Is it the fact that they had to play in a bubble last year and they're perhaps not used to it? Or is it just like a new phase of athlete that they don't want to win at home anymore?
What I would say, just to put a little bit of a data context in the mix, obviously, like you said, is it this, is it that, correlation versus causation, is it the home court advantage being, lack of audience? Is it, having played in the bubble? Is it simply just health issues associated to the pandemic or is it simply morale about living in a pandemic in an age that's just completely different? And again, it's a short sample, right? It's just 1 year where this has happened, so it's really tough to say. It is, there has to be some sort of correlation, from 60, 70 to 40, 50. That's insane. I had no idea. That's absolutely insane. So,
big drop.
I mean, my gut says away will win. So, what do you guys think?
So I think to kind of, if you were to do a deep dive on the actual kind of, catalyst behind this phenomena, if you'd like to call it, I think it's a multitude of things. Obviously, I think fans and having that atmosphere being taken away is a huge, obviously, I mean, it's the most straightforward answer. But I think kind of the thing that's happening behind the scenes, and this is across all sports, but I know the NBA is very focused on it even more, which is the concept of sports psychiatry and just having that kind of mentality, regardless, both positive and negative, an independent cause from performance. Like if you're being booed, like how does the sports psychologist support the athlete to take that more as fuel rather than as actually putting them down? And I think more and more, that realm is super. Just, that it's very interesting because I think teams are still trying to balance, the gut feeling and flair of all the sports versus just analytics, science. Everything needs to be finely constructed. But I feel it's just more the inclusion of preparing these athletes to just perform at a top tier level, regardless. I don't know, Seb, if you had something else that you wanted to touch on.
No, I mean, I do think this whole year has just been crazy, not just sports-wise. I think it will be interesting to see if it carries on next season. In terms of specifically tomorrow night's game, I think we're going to buck the trend. I think the Clippers will turn it on. I think we're going to get through.
Fourth time lucky.
I'm still... yeah, fingers crossed. Kawhi is the best player in the series. With the game on the line, the best players stand up and they get the job done. So I think.
Well, tell me about
Kawhi
it.
gets it done.
Tell me about it. That game's bouncy shot. Are you
Exactly.
kidding me?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Alright.
So yeah, I think we will be progressing to round 2. I hope.
Well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow night.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed hearing us ramble about sports, check out our socials at the description below. For more content, please feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys around later.